previously promised now, Anna Palmer and Jake Sherman, the co-authors of the Politico playbook, good enough to join us. St. Olaf's finest and a rich man's Yinkadare. And boy, do we appreciate the two of you joining us. Guys, I want to start with Donald Trump today, reiterating the lack of a flip-flop. That would go against a previous reporting both from months ago by the New York Times and earlier over the weekend after this meeting he had with a group of Hispanic advisors. It is said and believed perhaps that the Trump campaign's policy regarding the employment of a deportation force to remove upwards of 12 million undocumented immigrants may not be as final perhaps as some might have thought. What to make of it all?
I think the problem Donald Trump has at this point is that he's put himself in a box, right, and with basically a huge swath, 75% of the population, which does not agree with instituting some deportation force to round up 12 million people and kick them out of the country. So he's trying, I think, to appeal at the same time to the hard right swath of the Republican electorate and the moderate part of most of the electorate.
I like to call this political gymnastics, right? You're moving from the primary phase where he's really going after hardline Republicans who, really feel probably that deportation is what they want to do, to now try to kind of pivot towards this general election. And I think this is kind of what we're trying to see as he tries to figure out a way to, kind of keep the hard right Republicans, but also appeal to the broader electorate.
And what to make of this reporting based on the shift that we saw, or the shakeup rather, with his staff. Paul Manafort out, and on one hand, Kellyanne Conway, a GOP pollster, perhaps her fingerprints could be seen here. However, also hired Steve Bannon, who certainly would be opposed to this sort of shift.
Yeah, I think what you're starting to see is kind of him figure out how he's going to thread the needle on some of these policy issues. I don't think we know yet, right? We've seen so many different times that this campaign has rebooted or tried to figure out a way. And the question of, is Trump going to pivot in a long-term fashion? I don't think we're going to know for the next several weeks, if not months. But I think you are starting to see maybe some kind of moderation in how he's choosing to talk about this stuff.
But Josh, I think the big issue here is, so we talk about this shift, right? And this morning, the Trump campaign wanted to talk about the Clinton Foundation, but Donald Trump's first two tweets of the morning, which reached 10 million people, and really many millions more because they're read on cable news all the time, Donald Trump talking about the MSNBC morning show, Morning Joe. So again, we see this guy is really unable or unwilling, frankly, to stay on topic, to stay on message, and instead tries to settle scores just 12 hours after Kellyanne Conway went on the morning shows and said Donald Trump doesn't hurl personal insults. Donald Trump is hurling personal insults at Joe Scarborough and Mika Brzezinski. So a really confounding morning that adds to a confounding campaign.
And interestingly, GOP pollster, CBS News advisor as well, Frank Luntz, did a focus group in the state of Pennsylvania, perhaps the most battlegroundy state of them all. And he had 24 undecided voters, 18 of whom, however, identified as having leaned towards Donald Trump at one point. And asking for their one-word definitions of Donald Trump at this point, 3/4 of them said some variation of childish, rancorous, erratic. It seems as though it's the flip side, right, of the coin that a lot of people felt themselves attracted to Donald Trump in the first place. A guy who told it like it was, who thumbed his nose at political correctness and really put forward his unpredictability as a big positive for him. Is it possible, I guess, then? I think we can all let the pivot go. Is it possible for him to appeal to these people he's lost?
I think it's tough, right? When you look at what Hillary Clinton is trying to do, she's out today with an ad, and all she's trying to do is use his own words to kind of reinforce that message that he can't be trusted. He's not the guy that you want to have their finger on the button or getting that 2 a.m. phone call, and he continues to play into that narrative. So I think when you look at how many tens of millions of dollars they're going to spend in this campaign to try to reinforce that message, it's going to be very hard for Donald Trump. And I think we're already seeing what Jake was just saying about the fact that he's arguing on Twitter with Morning Joe and not kind of sticking sticking to the message, which I actually think they probably have a clearer, better way in terms of attacking the Clinton Foundation, that, that he just can't kind of find a way to have any message discipline.
And to add to that, Josh, it's not really, Hillary Clinton isn't making this a campaign about Hillary Clinton has better prescriptions on national security or terrorism. Hillary Clinton's making the very shrewd, in her campaign's eyes, calculation that he is unfit to be the president. You do not want this guy who gets set off by a tweet to have the nuclear codes. And she has the money and the ability to do that. Donald Trump is up on the air in battleground states, I think $2 million.
$4 million.
And Hillary Clinton went up with $80 million in advertising today. So this is not really, I mean, Donald Trump's kind of bringing a knife to a gunfight in a lot of ways.
You mentioned that ad buy, and it was profound. Not just 80 million on TV, another 15 million on the radio. I want to play one of the ads, then it would appear folks in battleground states can look forward to seeing early and often.
In times of crisis, America depends on steady leadership.
Knock the crap out of them, would you? Seriously.
Clear thinking.
I know more about ISIS than the generals do, believe me.
And calm judgment.
And you can tell them to go themselves.
Because all it takes is one wrong move.
I would bomb the shit out of them.
Just one.
For all the world, it feels like something we might have seen from the Trump campaign.
Right. I mean, this is a pretty unambiguous message, and again, Hillary Clinton is trying to take. If you look at Frank Luntz's poll focus group, that's what we're seeing across the country. That Donald Trump's numbers are upside down when it comes to, is this guy fit to be the president and to be at the White House?
The big thing, though, is this has worked for him, right? This rhetoric worked on the campaign trail for the first several months in terms of all of the primary, and now they're starting to use his words against him because if you look in Pennsylvania, Ohio, Florida, all of these states, these kinds of messages aren't resonating with the average voter.
And quickly then, I want to get your thoughts on something that we saw in People magazine, in fact. Former Secretary of State Colin Powell pushing back on reports that he was the one who told Hillary Clinton to use a private email server. It has been, and in Frank's focus group, we saw again, there were not variations of a description. It was the same essentially word used to describe her over and over and over again, untrustworthy. How bad then does Powell's refuting of her suggestion that it was all his idea look for her?
I think it just plays really in the hand of what Hillary Clinton's biggest weakness is. We've seen it over and over again, this untrustworthiness factor. You talk to Democratic operatives and they say, you know what, we know we're not going to change this number around wholly, but they are very aware and I think concerned that it doesn't get any more upside down in terms of more people thinking that she's untrustworthy. I think this Powell thing, I don't think it's a game changer in terms of, whether or not people think that she's lying about these emails, but this campaign cannot get out in front of her email server situation. They've tried in many different ways, and they continue to stumble on it.
But I will say, if this were a normal campaign, having a former Secretary of State with sky-high approval ratings basically call the Democratic nominee a liar, this would play horribly for Hillary Clinton if you didn't have her opponent talking on Twitter and wherever he can about cable news programs. So, again, a lost opportunity for Donald Trump.
You seem to be suggesting that this is not a normal campaign cycle, Jake Sherman. I can't believe it.
I'm suggesting it's a little bit off, a little bit strange.
The A-ist of teams, Anna Palmer and Jake Sherman, we appreciate it.
Thanks, John.
Thanks.